Evening, everyone. My name is Roseanne Santos. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And welcome today to one of our webinars where we're going to talk about how do you stay relevant in these uncertain times. And we have the privilege today of hearing from one of John Jay's illustrious alums. His name is Mr. Kenny Torres. He is a corporate attorney with Sidley LLC in New York City. And he has some expertise. He survived the recession of 2008, landed on his feet, and has found success in his profession as an attorney, but can also really provide all of you some really important insight into exactly what the title of this webinar is, and that is staying relevant, right? How do you make sure you're sharp? How do you make sure you're ready to pivot, be nimble? We were, all of those terms that seem kind of, what does that mean? Those are going to be important for you to understand and how to translate that into what you can do as you go forward in your careers. So with that, I introduce to you Kenny Torres. Kenny, can you just give us a small bio about yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are, why you are, what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Katie Torres, and I'm counsel at Sidley Austin. Been there my entire legal career, approximately 14 years. And counsel is a title that's given at corporate firms to sort of senior attorneys, just to distinguish them because they have a track record and have a certain knowledge base that the other more junior attorneys don't have. Some background on me. I graduated from John Jay many years ago, before some of you were born, I think. I fear that that's the case. I went to work so once I graduated John Jay, I tried to get a sense of what law was like, because I was the first college graduate in my family, like many people in John Jay. And I went to work for corporate counsel for a while. So what working for the government was like. Then I went in-house, or should I say, to a small firm, as a paralegal, trying to get a sense of law. Then I went on to Brooklyn Law School. And when I got to Brooklyn Law School, I thought I was going to be a DA. That was my mission in life, right? Coming out of John Jay, a lot of Fourth Amendment, a lot of that type of law. But then I pivoted and realized that I like different areas of law, and I ended up liking corporate more, and I became a corporate lawyer. As I said, I've been with my firm for 14 years. And sometimes when you tell people you've been with your firm for 14 years, they get a sense that it has been all stable and steady, but it's been quite the opposite, because at a corporate firm, we are sort of exposed to, I think, more the dynamics of the economic market. So there's a lot of turbulence. And really my time at my firm has been, I always tell people I've had multiple careers within my firm, because you have to pivot, you have to understand what's new in the market, and you have to stay relevant, which is why I think that this topic is so on point, because it's actually the story of my life, the story of my career, staying relevant and pivoting with the times.
Well, thank you so much. I look forward to hearing more about that. But before we get into the real deep nitty gritty, I always have to do my PSA and ask you to complete the following sentence. If it wasn't for John Jay College, ...
Oh, I mean, if it wasn't for John Jay College, I just wouldn't have had the success in my career that I've been able to have. I mean, there's a lot, you learn. I mean, I learned a lot about law, right? But I also learned a lot of perspectives on life. And I went to school during the day, part-time. So there was a lot of like real life and a lot of real life experiences that I learned at John Jay. So I certainly wouldn't be where I'm at were it not for John Jay.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to get into the actual topic. From a career perspective, how have you been able to stay relevant in all your years, these 14 years of practicing law? Can you get a little bit more detailed about what that means in terms of you having a bunch of different jobs, even though you've been able to stay at the same firm?
Sure. I think the key word is just staying sort of current, right? As things change, you have to be able to change. So I can go back to 2008. I was a relatively young attorney, and in 2008, as you can imagine, the economic collapse, and there were a lot of layoffs and a lot of nervousness in the market. What I did was I just looked around and saw, okay, what is still relevant, what is still hot, right? So the way I'm a corporate lawyer, so the way corporate world works is the equities market, which is kind of like your stocks, right? Like, Coca-Cola and, Microsoft, they move essentially counter-cyclical to commodities. Commodities, when equities are down, commodities are up. In 2008, that's when the collapse came and the market went down. So the equities went down. I said, okay, my group, they also did some commodity work. So I attached myself to commodities. I read about it. I tried to, everyone was in panic mode. I'm like, okay, let me educate myself on commodities so I can have a conversation. And if they're looking for someone to work in commodities, at least they know that I'm conversant. At least they know that I'm smart enough to know the lingo. And lo and behold, that's what happened. Then a commodities product came, and I was tasked to work on it. And that kind of got me through that period when people were really scared for their jobs. I mean, it was not a great time. I don't think, in the corporate world or in any aspect. But what I did, it wasn't that terribly busy for corporate law standards. So I wrote an article on the work that I did. It took a lot of time, but I said, okay, I need to position myself and I need to give myself a conversation piece, right? Like, one thing is to say I work in commodities. Another thing is to say, and by the way, I'm an author. Like, I've written a substantive document on this that you can go and look up, and it's going to be a good guide. And I actually just borrowed that from a partner that she had put one together for another area of law. And I just took literally her outline. I was like, okay, there's nothing on what I'm doing that achieves what she achieved with this. And I need to keep myself and people, I need people to think about me when they're thinking about new clients, and also outside the outside world to see me as an expert, right? Because that's one of the things that you try to achieve at the firm is doing that. So doing that, it helped because these were sort of challenging times, right? These were challenging times when there wasn't a lot going on, and in my firm, at least in the corporate world, the way it is, if you're not adding value, you can become an ex-employee. So it was hard for me to as a minority, right, at a big corporate firm, because that is challenging enough. Uh, B, with someone, I was at a big firm, and something that you should know, that I love John Jay, but the fact is, like, um, a lot of the people that I'm competing with, they're coming out of Harvard, Columbia, so they have this pedigree. So I had that. So that was also a challenge that I had to overcome. And the way I did it was just becoming stronger. Like, I just felt like when I walk into the room, it is a challenging environment, and when I walk into the room, I want people to understand that you got to put aside your pedigree. You got to deal with, like, the now, and I made myself relevant in the kind of like the current situation. Um, and it was hard. It wasn't easy. Like, writing the article, learning a new area of law on the go. Those were all challenges, and at times, you come home and you're like, maybe I should find another source of employment. But it you overcome it and you become stronger. And I became the go-to person in that area
Wow. In commodities, you're saying you
in
became
commodities. But then
after.
commodities went down. But we'll talk about that later.
Okay. All right. Can you talk about some foundational skill sets, though, that it takes? So you already talked about staying relevant. You actually wrote, right? You decided that you had to do this other thing, which for some people, they go and get MFAs, Masters in Fine Arts, to do. So what are some of the basic, what they call soft skills or essential skills that people need to roll into this mindset that you're talking about?
I think it's about a mindset of being positive about what you know, right? I think one of the challenges that I see people, even young associates and people looking for employment, they sort of come to me, we'll have a coffee. There's a difference with someone who has this aura and confidence about them, even though they're looking for work, right? Um, and 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 so, right, you can have the same conversation with two different people, and you walk away with one that's like, okay, this person is phenomenal. they have the same background, but one is more positive about, hey, I know what I know, and I feel positive about my achievements, and I feel positive about my skill sets, because you're the first person selling yourself, right? Like if you walk into the room and there's not this positive aura about you, then other people are going to, you know, they're gonna question you. For me, it's more like, okay, you have the soft skills. Um, it's more about do the work. And I know a lot of people like, coming out of John Jay, where it's kind of like a, look how like we work hard background. It's about just having that confidence that you know your stuff, and that you're confident in your abilities to learn, right? Because everyone is going to learn. If you start in a new job, there's a learning curve, right? There's always a learning curve. Sometimes it's very steep, sometimes it's not, but you're new. And how confident you come across really, really distinguishes you, I think. And that's the main skill that I think people need to work on. And and I think I'm gonna plug John Jay, because I gotta say I took a public speaking course in the school that really helped me. It really um, uh, it helped me feel more confident. I actually had to debate, in front of an audience there, and that experience, to be honest, just helped me, you know, feel confident about myself, be able to feel like I can command, right, the attention of people. And quite frankly, not everybody knows everything. So be confident in knowing that you don't know everything and you don't need every answer on the spot.
Okay, thank you. So I happen to know some folks on the call personally. I happen to know there's at least one or two young attorneys who recently graduated from law school, and are
Awesome.
yeah, and are in that work mindset and trying to find work. And so I'm gonna kind of twist it a little bit and talk a little bit about finding work in the law profession during COVID. Are law firms even hiring? And if so, in what areas of the law are they hiring?
It's a challenging time, I will say. Law firms, so there are different layers of law firms, as they well know. Um, you know, for my firm is so structured, like it's just like this very rigid structure where like they have this summer program and they have this recruiting cycle. Um, but in terms of being relevant, right? I'll give you a perfect example. And he's a John Jay alum, Randy. And I met Randy, right? I don't know if you guys know Randy?
Randy is doing the next webinar on the 23rd for us, or on the
Randy,
30th.
Randy is awesome. I love Randy because when I met Randy, he came across as that person I was talking about, with that aura of like, hey, you know, this confidence and this I can do, right? And what I liked about him is that when you have a conversation with him, even though he was looking for a corporate job when I met him, his profile and everything, that his interest, everything told you this guy wants to work at a corporate firm or for in-house in a corporate environment. Sometimes you come across young attorneys that you have a coffee with them and you're like, okay, so what do you want to do? Well, I want to go into IT. Okay, what are you doing these days? Well, I'm doing, uncontested divorce cases, pro bono. I'm doing this. And I'm like, wait, everything that you're doing and everything that you're saying has nothing to do with what you want to do. You can't have that profile. For me, like when I knew that I wanted to kind of pivot, I literally did this thing on LinkedIn where I would not friend anyone, even if I knew them. I wouldn't accept their friend request if they didn't fit the profile, because I wanted to get into a certain circle. And I didn't want my profile to say, because they see who your 50 friends are, right? I wanted my profile to say I'm headed this way. And I literally did not accept, I'm like, we can be friends on Facebook. We don't need to be friends on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a professional environment that I try to use to, for my benefit, right? I mean, to further my career, right? So my LinkedIn profile is always polished. My picture is the picture from my firm. I mean, my firm actually monitors it, so my firm is like very anal about it. But even before my firm really became, got on top of that, my LinkedIn profile told people what I wanted to do, right? Even the friends that I friended on LinkedIn, I try not to friend. I'm like, this is not related. We're not, there's no reason, friend me on Facebook. you know. Um, so yeah, so Randy and back to Randy, you know, and others that I've come across, when you're looking for a job or you're looking to pivot, right? Make sure that your resume says what you want to do. Make sure that your activities say what you want to do. Make sure that your conversations say, I know this industry. I want to get into the industry, right? And be able to hold your own with a conversation. Because the worst thing is if you want to, for example, go into corporate and there could be some significant developments in the corporate world, like that everyone knows about, and you can't hold a conversation about it. So if you're looking for a job, whether it's in corporate, whether it is in a mid-sized firm, you know, make sure that you're very, you know, intentional. Intentional is the real word.
I love that. That's first of all, thank you for the commercial for Randy.
Yeah,
I'm
plug in.
gonna let you know. I'm gonna let him know that you did a
I
commercial for him.
plugged them.
Yes, and Megan has put the information for his webinar in the chat. It's called "Standing Out Above the Crowd" in today's job market. And so, thank you for that. And I think, Kenny, that everything you're talking about really refers to any career. It's not just the law profession. It sounds like this is equally good information if you want to go into higher ed or into the nonprofit world or anything like that. And you mentioned LinkedIn, and I want to talk a little bit about that because every time I try to network with the graduating seniors, they're like, "Oh, I don't have a LinkedIn," or "Oh, I haven't
Right.
opened it in a year." So can you kind of convince my audience here that it is an important, really important platform if you use it the way you're supposed to, as you started to talk about?
Oh, LinkedIn is critical. I mean, it's critical. I actually judge people on whether or not they have a LinkedIn account. If I look you up and you don't have a LinkedIn account, I assume you're not really in the professional world. Like you're like in this bubble. And you know, for me, um, it has allowed me to connect with so many people, influential people,
Mhm.
allow me to expand my network, allow me to be, you know, in touch with people who are in the same area, right? And then you join sort of like subgroups and you kind of follow their information. And you know, it's better than like for Yahoo News. Yahoo News is going to give you a lot of politics and a lot of things that you're like, you know, the Kardashians did this, and you're like, who needs this? You know, this is more like curated, you know, especially if you keep your network tight, right? It's curated. And I think, you know, how you present yourself, that picture, right? The picture, I mean, they see that picture constantly, whether you could be the most grumpy person in the world, but if your LinkedIn picture has you smiling, that's the idea people have of you, right? So have the right picture. Make sure that your profile is up to date. You know, that's the other thing. If someone goes and they see that your profile is not up to date, then again, they don't know how important it is. And you know, I've gotten job, you know, requests from LinkedIn. They're like, "Oh, I found you on LinkedIn. Can we talk?" Because you know it's open, right? And there are a lot of recruiters on it. And if you should be on it, and you should work with, you know, I don't know if there's an office at John Jay that helps alums put together sort of profiles, but you should kind of work with a professional if you can to make sure that it is crafted in a way that appeals and that is, you know, mainstream.
Mhm.
But the, certainly you have to have a LinkedIn. If you're in this space, you is a must.
Yes, the Center for Career and Professional Development actually does LinkedIn platform trainings, and they walk through all of the important pieces and what you should write and how it should look. So yes, and not only that, Kenny, the basics are actually there in LinkedIn. Like if you do a search in LinkedIn, they'll tell you the top 5 things to elevate your profile. So even, to your point earlier, do your research. These are things at your fingertips, information at your fingertips. But yes, there's a lot of headhunting that goes on LinkedIn, even at the entry level. So consider making sure that your LinkedIn page um, is in good shape, because I have been able to learn a lot. This is how I've been able to communicate. This is how I communicated with Kenny, and I've been able to communicate with a lot of alumni that I'm trying to engage just in the same exact way, and it's been really successful for me. So if your LinkedIn is not good when you get off this call, you need to start going and playing with it and making
Yes.
sure that you're there.
Yes.
So
Let me just say one. I want to say one thing about job hunting because I always have to say this story. You know, I was in Brooklyn Law School, um, and coming from John Jay, you know, and I wanted to get into a big firm. And if you look at the profiles, if you go on like my firm, everyone's profile is up. If you look for CUNY, you're not going to find many. I think you're not going to find any other than me. Um, it's a tough market to break into, right? But this is what I found interesting when I was graduating from law school. I had performed well. I was a night student. I performed well. I performed better than most of my peers. You know, my Latino and African American peers. But I was blown away by the fact that I was the only hustler. I was the only guy at every job fair. You know, I mean, I was at every job fair. There was one time the Black Law Student Association put together a job fair. It was like an introductory, you know, like on a Saturday. And I showed up to school, you know, to study because I went to school at night. So I used the weekend to study. I showed up in my jeans, you know, and they're like, oh, you didn't know about the job fair? I'm like, no, I kid you not. I walked down to the shopping mall. I bought myself an outfit, a tie, a shirt, pants that day. And I walked into that thing. I was like, and you know what? I got a job interview from that, by the way. So for me, it's about don't leave any stone unturned because no matter your credentials, the competition is fierce, COVID, non-COVID, whatever environment, and you have to kind of just go at it. I mean, I was at it, and and it's funny because I performed so much better than all of them, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but you know, like, I mean, out of out of all of us, I think five of us landed with big job, you know, big law firm jobs. But I was the biggest like hustler. I was like, you know what? I got all this school debt. I'm not trying to play around. I'm not effing around here. This is serious, and I need a job. And I went to every job fair. I took every note that I could. If I met someone, they were like, "Hey, you know, keep in touch." I kept in touch. I wrote behind their business card. I'm like, "Such and such, keep in touch." I just kept notes on people that I met because it was my objective was I need a job, and I already had made my decision to go work at a corporate firm because I wanted to do corporate work. So I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot for the top. You know, I'm going to try to get the best job at the best firm. You know, I landed 20 spots off the number one, but I'm in the top 20 law firm. So, you
that's fantastic. And please toot your own horn. That's why
know,
you're here. That is why you're doing the webinar. And for those of you who don't know, Sidley, I know has offices all over the country.
all over
Isn't
the
that
world.
all over the world? Thank you. Isn't that where Michelle and Barack Obama met?
And the Chicago office, yes.
Yes, see? So
Yes.
many things can happen at a Sidley office, right?
Yeah,
You
you
can
can
meet your
meet the
life
next president.
partner or the next president. Right,
Right.
right. That is such a great point. And I actually, I want you to touch a little bit more on the how to network and not so much that it's important. Everybody says it's important. But if I have somebody on this call who follows up with me and says, do you think you can introduce me to Mr. Torrero? What would be your advice to that audience member on how to best capture your attention so that you can develop some kind of even small mini mentorship or even just a one-time conversation? What do they need to do to make sure they do that follow-up with you? What do you have to hear from them to make it a good networking opportunity?
You know, there's so few of us, and so, you know, that, and people are so willing to, you know, that's why Randy's coming on, right? Like, there's so few of us, and people are so willing. What I find is that students, for the most part, they never follow up.
Right.
You know, they never follow up. I don't know, it's because they're shy or whatnot. But if I gave out 500 business cards, I probably got one follow up. And I go to these, you know, how to get into law school events and how to do this, and I'm like, here, you know, my card, my card, my card. And I tell people to their face, I'm like, you will never email me. Yes, I will. I'm like, no, you won't. I'm like, I get the cards for free. That's why you got one. But if I had to pay, I wouldn't be giving them out because no one uses them. Um, I think genuinely just showing an interest, right? If you have an interest in an area, people are more than happy to, you know, I mean, pre-COVID, you know, I would have coffees with people and give them whatever guidance because, you know, I've been there. I mean, I got lucky, you know, like you know, it's better to be lucky than good, right? I ended up at a corporate law firm doing work that I like, But I didn't know. My family didn't have an investment portfolio. I didn't know what a mutual fund was. Most of the work that I do, I had no understanding of. Um, so for me to have a conversation with someone that I can kind of like give them hey, let me give you the lay of the land, right? That to me is great. It's just a follow up is hard, but and also don't think that you're bothering people if you're following up, because you're not. I give you an example. I just looked at my screen, and I today I'm on a couple of deals, one of which is launching tomorrow, which is why I'm kind of like frenetic. And I got today 538 emails.
Well, thank you for being here with us today. Oh my goodness.
Today. I mean, I was like this morning, I was mentioning to Megan before we got on, and I was just like, I got like 4 competing calls right now with this one. But I told everyone in the morning, I'm like, I'm blocked out. And then things just popped into my calendar. So people are busy. Just follow up. Sometimes this Jaime Mercado he's a partner at Sims. He's a Dominican partner, one of the first like real Dominican, like real like big firm partners. Sometimes you email Jaime, he'll literally email you 2 weeks later, but he'll email you back. Be like, my bad. I'm like, dude, I know how it goes. Like, don't worry about it. Like, thanks for getting back to me.
Right.
Never email him thinking he's sitting by his email, waiting for my email.
Great.
Just be persistent.
Important, yes. So I want to encourage folks to start throwing those questions in the chat. And while you start doing that and percolating, I'm going to keep going. But as soon as I see a question, I will stop and take yours over mine. But I can go on all night. I was hoping that you could, if you felt comfortable, that you could talk a little bit about your background. I know that you're an immigrant. If you could talk a little bit about, some of your life experiences, life lessons. I remember you shared a story with me. You came here and you didn't speak a lick of English. And look at you now, you're at a top 20 law firm. So if you would feel, whatever you feel comfortable sharing about like your personal background and your immigration experience and all of that.
Sure. Let me think.
On the spot, I'm sorry.
On the spot, okay.
It's Hispanic Heritage Month. I want to learn
all about
how wonderful our Latinos are.
Well, I came here from the DR when I was 8 years old. In second, going to third grade. As I said, I didn't speak a lick of English. I went to school in the South Bronx, which for me, it's another just it tells a lot when you are able to come out of the public school system. I mean, throughout, right? Which was a better system than our kids have now. I mean, I lament that, right? I mean, we had like full-on orchestra, band stuff. Right now, they just have like, school. In terms of experiences, I think it was just more like teachers. I remember in the 6th grade, just teachers just encouraging me, like they're like, "You're smart, keep going." And I took that to heart. They were extremely helpful and put me on the right path. High school was a bit of a blur. Then college, I mean, high school was a blur. I won't go into high school. I can't go into those details. Let's just skip that. That record is sealed, right? That's a sealed record.
Yes.
And then college, I really went to John Jay because I wanted to be a DA, like I wanted to be a district attorney, but perhaps more because that's all I knew. You never see on TV a corporate lawyer. You don't know what they do, I went to John Jay thinking I was going to go to pursue that. My kind of ideal trajectory was going to be I was going to become a detective first, to see the lay of the land. But then I was like, I don't want to be a cop, so I'll skip that. I'm going straight to law school. Then I went to law school, and one mistake that I made was I only applied to Brooklyn Law School because I knew I wanted to be a district attorney. And I didn't want to go to Fordham because I was sick of Midtown because John Jay, I'd gone to John Jay. I was like, I want to stay around here. And also, Brooklyn was near the courthouses. So I was like, this makes perfect sense. This is the perfect plan. Then I got to law school and I realized, well, 2 things happened. I have an identical twin brother who graduated undergrad at the same time. And his career sort of took off in the corporate environment. And here I am, like, still, like, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I was like, oh, corporate looks cool. But also, I was just more, I just gravitated towards the corporate law work. It was better for me. It suited my personality. Um, so I essentially tried to pivot, and then I realized I had a challenge, right? It was challenging. In John Jay, it was challenging because I was like, okay, I want to go to law school, and I read every book, and they're like, well, if you're coming out of CUNY, you better get straight A's. And I was like, okay. And I like worked my butt off, and then I got to Brooklyn Law, and I'm like, okay, now I want to go to corporate, and they're like, well, Brooklyn Law is not a type law school, so to get to corporate, you got to get straight A's. I was like, okay, here we go again, right? Um, so I kind of did that, and I worked extremely hard, but I was super focused. I mean, I made very few friends at John Jay or Brooklyn Law School. I
Mhm.
showed up and I wasn't playing around. I showed up. I needed straight A's. I wasn't doing. You know what I would do, and I'm embarrassed of it now, but looking back, it was a survival mode. What I would do when I was in John Jay was if I was studying in a place and people figured out what I was studying, I would switch my spot at the library because I just didn't want anyone bothering me. Well, first of all, people weren't there for business. Some people were like playing dominoes, and then trying to get all the answers to the test from me. Um, so my experience is really trying to really figuring it out, reading books and figuring out, okay, what does it take to get to the next step, right? From John Jay, what does it take to get to a law school in Brooklyn? What does it take to get to this, law firm? And then at the law firm, it's super challenged because they couldn't figure out when I first started at Silly, they couldn't figure out how to put my undergrad because they didn't understand that John Jay. They're like, it's CUNY. What is it? And I literally had to call the person. I'm like, let me explain to you the system. Like, so there were challenges there, and the way to overcome it for me has always been just show up ready. Just show up ready and let the chips fall where they may. Like that's just my MO. It's always been like you just work your ass off, get prepared, and then it's you and your preparation against whoever else is on the other side.
Yeah.
So that's how I think I've overcome challenges, just trying to be as prepared as possible. And then, like I tell my son, I said, once you're prepared, just have the swag, just have the confidence that I'm prepared. And not only is my preparation, but my demeanor is telling you that I'm prepared.
That's amazing. I mean, it sounds so simple, right? But that's amazing advice. And I think just from listening to you, I mean, I'm ready to go apply to law school listening to you. I feel so motivated. Seriously, I'm kind of a PhD on the verge of a PhD dropout, but I almost feel like I need to call the school and be like, you know what, I'm coming back. So even I feel very motivated at the moment. But we do have a question that was submitted in advance. And the
Okay.
question is, how would you improve communication skills to stay relevant? That's a good question.
In this environment, I mean, I think that the advantage that young professionals have right now is that we're all this is a change. I mean, this is a paradigm shift what's happening here. Right? It has forced people to be better at communication. It has forced me to do better emailing. Like I was easier picking up the phone because it's easy to just, you got it when you're drafting an email, it takes long, you got to think about it. It's actually forcing you. My thing is to embrace the situation, right? Embrace the current situation, right? So embrace the fact that there are more Zoom calls, right? Embrace the fact that don't be shy about, and I'm saying this to an audience that no one is on a Zoom with the video, right? But like, don't be shy about it. Like, show up because if I see your face now on the Zoom call and then we bump into each other, there's this certain level of like familiarity that you're going to have. Whereas if you're shy and you're behind behind the name, then that's not as helpful, right? Uh, so don't be shy about it. That's just the new world. That's just what happens. Sometimes and this is not the only Zoom call I'm on. Sometimes I'm on like WebEx for clients that I'm the only person on video. Because I'm like, you put a WebEx together and you're not going to show your face. I'm like, embrace the current environment and actually understand that you're going to have an edge over older attorneys, over older people. That's just a fact. Dinosaurs who have a way of doing things. So my takeaway would be, hey, embrace the situation and take your time learning. If you're not a good emailer, just this is the time to kind of learn that, right? Like I've gotten better at emails, you know.
Mhm.
Personally, I've been practicing for 14 years, but in the office environment, you mark up the document and you walk into the partner's office and you have a conversation, right? You can kind of walk people through it. Now you're forced to like, okay, let me put it in an email, and that's a new way of writing, even for me. And I wasn't very good at it. I mean, just, full disclosure. I mean, I'm a contractor, I'm a corporate lawyer. We draft up contracts, we mark up things. We're not litigators. The litigators go on for years. They write like, you're like, get to the point, right? You know, um, for us, it was more like the conversation, and I've had to adapt and be
Okay.
more like a litigator, like really like explain what I'm talking about.
So essentially, there's a time here to get creative and start. No one has been in a world like this before. So some of the how you're going to communicate, you're going to have to invent and maybe watch what other people are doing. And that kind of comes with our next question. Giuseppe Fioretto, which is Fioretto, who is one of the students I recently spoke about. He just graduated law school, and he's asking, how would you recommend networking during COVID since there are no in-person networking events? So is there some kind of different nuance about networking this way via Zoom or via phone?
Um, my advice would be, all of these organizations are in survival mode, right? So they're all doing virtual galas and virtual, meetings. Everyone is doing it, right? And the fact is that they're all in survival mode for a reason, right? And they're all embracing, right? So, like, for example, look at today. Like, if you think about the audience, it could have been much bigger, right? The organizations are thinking about that as well. So they're opening these things up to bigger groups just to make sure they get the right number of people to show up. So I would, just scour the internet and see who has an event and show up, right? Like that's a new way of doing it, right? And show up and don't be afraid to ask a question, right? If you're new and you're not asking questions now, you're wasting your time. What I mean by that is, even as an attorney, when I think back at the mistakes that I made as a young attorney, I'm like, wow, I didn't ask enough questions. I was afraid to ask questions. And now that I'm a senior lawyer, it doesn't even look good if I ask a question. So I spend so much time researching and like getting myself like up to speed on things because I'm like, I can't ask that question. Whereas if I was a junior lawyer, I'll just pop it in. I'm like, hey, what the hell is this, right? For me now, and this happens a lot with clients, which is, it's a little, it can take a toll because billable work, right? As you all know, we bill hours, we bill by the hour, right? Sometimes I got to spend an hour boning up on something before I can even bill an hour because I neglected to ask enough questions. But if I was a junior attorney, that's all fair. So if you're a young professional, the expectation from more seasoned lawyers is that you will have questions. So when you get on these group things, ask a question, just, make it an intelligent question, sure. And, but do ask, and if you articulate it the right way, there's no wrong question.
Right.
There are no wrong questions. There are no bad questions.
Yeah, and
People love to answer questions.
I agree with that. I think people like to show that people are here because they're experts and they want to share their expertise, and that is a great thing, right? Um, so one of the a piece of advice I like to add on to Kenny's, and he already touched on this, is when you attend, and you don't have to do it now, but when in the future, as you attend more webinars in this environment, really think about presenting yourself on the video, right? So why are you not on the video? Is it because you didn't do your hair? Is it because your background is a little messy? Is it because you're shy? So start doing some self-reflection on that simple piece. Find the cleanest corner in the house. We all have a non-messy corner.
Yes, find the cleanest corner, please. I gotta jump in on this. I was on a video call with someone. They were in their room and their bed was a mess, and I was like, "Who the like? How do you do that?" Like, it was insane. I thought it was crazy. I'm like, at least make your bed. I understand you're in your room, but like, why is your bed a mess? Like, come on now, no excuse for that. I'm sorry I
Yeah.
had to jump in, but that was
No,
nuts.
no, it's true. Like you're making a first impression. Giuseppe asked us, how do you network in these times? And the reality is that it's video conferencing from your home. Unfortunately, we don't all have an extra room that can be this beautiful office that mimics your office at work, but find the cleanest room.
Get the right background.
Yeah, get a
Backdrop.
t-shirt, get a
Backdrop right
backdrop.
here.
As a matter of fact, for anyone who wants it, if you're a John Jay alum, I have a John Jay with the John Jay backdrop. I'll put it on in a little bit so you can see it. And
Got
just
it.
comb your hair, put on you don't even have to put on fancy pants. You just put on a nice shirt and you keep it moving. So I would highly recommend those of you who are students or new graduates or trying to really network to consider for your very next webinar to turn the camera on, because there is something to be said about your physical presence as part of the impression that you make. So that's just kind of something that I've noted in all of these webinars that I've been doing for alumni engagement. I don't see people kind of opening themselves up that way, and that might be something that you can self-reflect on.
Let me give you one example of like staying relevant and using this opportunity to, this. So, when COVID hit, like everywhere else, I mean, you saw it, everyone saw it, the market was tanking. People were like, uh-oh. I literally was like, full disclosure, I was like, okay, I could lose my job. Okay, so what's gonna happen, right? One of the things that I did was I made sure I got on these calls. And funny story is, so my group set up this like virtual coffee lounge thing, which people rarely get on. But I made it a point when I was not busy. Right now, I'm just too busy to even get on it. But I was like, okay, I'm slow. Like, let me make sure that I'm staying relevant, staying visible. I'm like, let me get on these things, right? I get on it, and who's on this virtual coffee thing? But the head of the firm, and it's me, the head of the firm, and one more person. And I'm having a full-on conversation with him. There's more to that. There's more background to this. He's been my mentor from the beginning, which is why it's better to be lucky than good. Before he was promoted, he was my mentor. Now he runs the whole darn office, 2,000 lawyer, global office. But the point is, I got on and we're having a conversation. And when we got off, I was just like, I was not doing much that morning because it's like a virtual coffee thing. I'm like, look what just happened. I'm having a full-on conversation with a guy that I don't know if you guys, I'll make up an old movie reference from The Usual Suspect. This guy's Kasia Sosak. Like, no one even, there are people that are afraid to have a conversation with him. I mean, afraid. This guy runs the company. It's actually funny to see partners afraid to have a conversation with him. Nicest guy in the world. So anyway, but that was an opportunity and I took it all for myself. I'm like, okay, I'll take this bonus. Why? Because I was proactive. I joined the call. I'm like, I have nothing better to do right now than to make myself relevant because my job is on the line here. Like people are gonna, now things stabilize, but when COVID first hit and they closed the economy, it wasn't looking good.
Right.
Right?
I think that's such an excellent point. It's the equivalent of an elevator pitch. And I often tell people who, for example, I'm in higher ed, if I get stuck in the elevator from the first floor to the sixth floor in Harron Hall with the president of the college, what is that conversation going to look like with her so that I am top of mind when opportunities roll around? And that's exactly what Kenny is talking about. He just so happened to be mentored by this gentleman, but what if he wasn't? What if he was, someone that he didn't know? He was having this opportunity, this really solid opportunity to get to know, and he was probably making an attempt to be more approachable. That would be my guess as to why he got.
This guy is great. It's just people don't know him.
Yeah. Yeah. But to your point, it's like, the fortune is in the follow-up. You take the opportunity.
Exactly.
This is not the time to be shy.
Right.
If you have issues with shyness, it depends on the level, but you can seek counseling for it. You can seek coaching for it. A piece of advice around the communication, something that could really help you, and people don't realize this, take an improv class. And if you don't know what improv is, it's what comedians do. They get a subject that you could just out of your head, and they try to make a joke or a story out of it. And it really helps you to think on your feet. So these are kind of little tips and tricks. You could probably find a free one on YouTube. Who knows? But actually, Kenny I don't see any other questions at the moment, but Kenny is, I don't know, he has a secret camera on my notes. because he perfectly segued into my next thought, which was the importance of mentorship. And if you can talk a little bit about how you have been able to get a mentor. Is it by happenstance? Have you been intentional about that? How that works? And even after 14 years, the fact that you still have mentors, I think is so crucial and important.
Um, Mentors, well, at my firm, you're assigned mentors.
Okay.
So, you are, but I have a lot of outside mentors. To me, when I find someone that's successful, people love to be called mentors. They just love it. It's like, a mentor. When I find someone that's successful, I invariably that person is fine, with people picking their brain and helping others. You don't find, they may be busy, but and that's one thing, but I never found someone who's like really doesn't want to kind of give advice and doesn't want to do things. For people who are genuinely, trying to get their foot in the door. Sometimes you don't have the right advice for people, but like listening to people and being a soundboard for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
How to find them is you find someone who you think would fits the profile, and you ask them for coffee. I mean, I've had that happen to me. Hey, can we grab a coffee? Nothing more flattering. You think I'm that important that you want to grab coffee with me? Or and some people are like, yeah, well, I'll go up to your office. I'm like, even better. If you think I'm that important to come up to Midtown to have a coffee with me, we'll sit down, we'll talk. You know. So the first thing is to find someone that has achieved more or less what you want to achieve, right? And then just see if that person is open for coffee. Like literally, like, hey, I would love to grab a coffee with you. I read your profile. You know, you know, it's like I tell, you know, emails don't cost anything. I think they should charge. Maybe I wouldn't be getting 600 emails a day if they cost something. I'm a big advocate for that, by the way. Emails should cost at least 25 cents per email. People would think more. They would take their time and they wouldn't inundate my inbox. But right now they cost nothing, right? And after you finish typing and you press send, look at your fingers. You still have all your fingers. Like there's nothing lost. If someone didn't respond, it's like, who cares? Like like that's something else that I got in my system. Just the fact that you press an email. If you take your time writing it and you press send, you lose nothing by it. You became a better writer. Like if the person responds, fine. If they don't, a lot of times people get 600 emails and your email just probably got lost. And I flag a lot of emails. I got to get back to it. And I'm like, oh, a week goes by. I'm like, oh yeah, that flag is still there. You know. So do reach out, do find mentors, in your space. They can at least guide you. They can tell you when events are happening. Any tip. You got to be a sponge. You got to take every piece of information and, grab onto it because, if you're looking for a job, if you're looking for career advancement, right? Whatever you're looking for, and do understand, like right now, like I have this mentor who's like totally unrelated to what I do. I'm trying to start like a business, a real estate thing on the side, and this guy's very successful. I know he's successful. I know he's busy, so I send him, WhatsApp emails every now and then. Sometimes he doesn't get back to me right away. I don't take it like personal. I'm like, oh, I'm never emailing him again. I'm like, hey, dude, like, what happened? Like, hey, just getting back. Sometimes he's, oh, sorry, dude, I meant to get back to you, and things got away. Just know that. Just send the email and don't be afraid to follow up and understand that if they're a mentor, then they're important enough that this person is busy. And if the person is not busy, you should question whether this person should be your mentor. Like, what have they achieved? What are they doing? Like, wow, So that's my tip on mentors. I think you definitely should seek them out. They should have something in common with you and with your goals.
Thank you so much. I'm not seeing any more questions. We are almost at our hour. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, I know, Kenny, you've already talked about a couple of things that you said, oh, this is another mistake I made, or this, I wish I would have known this. And I would say, to close us out, what is that one thing you wish you knew then that you know now? Like if you were a 20 something, I mean, maybe you are 20 something, I shouldn't assume. If you are 20
I graduated almost 20 something years ago from John Jay.
20 something.
I'm a dinosaur.
No, not at all. I mean, this is great advice and great information. What do you wish you knew then you can now tell these folks so they don't have to say, yeah, I wish I knew that then. They can actually know it now in their 20s.
I wish I knew to ask more questions.
Okay.
I kind of relied on a lot on myself reading books about things. Um, it ultimately got me, to the right place. So people always say, "Oh, you ended up in the right place." I'm like, life is funny. I could have ended up somewhere else, right? Life is a funny thing. Like I never say, "Oh, yeah, my path was perfect because I ended up where I ended up." I'm like, luck and timing and everything else. Um, so I wish I would have asked more questions and taken it upon myself to educate myself about careers and different options. One of my regrets is that I did not transfer to Harvard um, from Brooklyn Law. And people are like, oh, but you ended up at a corporate law firm. I'm like, yes, I know, and I ended up yes, I know, but I performed well enough my first year in law school that I could have transferred. I chose not to. I chose to stay in Brooklyn. I look back on it and I'm like, boneheaded. And it was because I didn't know enough and I didn't ask questions. I was kind of going at it solo. And if I can go back, I probably would have asked more questions. I probably would have, again, I only applied to Brooklyn. I didn't even bother to like apply it to other places. And when I look back on it, I'm like, wow, that was stupid. Wow, Um, so I didn't ask enough questions. I thought I knew perfectly what I needed to do. I knew I wanted to be a DA, so I'm going to Brooklyn Law School. Look at me. I never set foot in a courthouse. I mean, I did, I think, on a pro bono matter. No, I think it was for a traffic ticket. I don't know. I haven't been to court. It's funny because my daughter one time, she offended me because she's like, so you're a lawyer, so do you do any real like lawyer things? Like, did you go to court? I'm like, yeah, I do lawyer things every day.
Mhm.
So asking questions, that's my one kind of thing that I wish I knew to do. I think I would have done a couple of things differently. And I don't write that off just because I ended up, at a major law firm. To me, I'm like, I should have done it. And if I were to do it again, I would ask questions. And I probably would go to Harvard.
And if I can say, just as an observation from this conversation, it sounds like you surrounded yourself with the right people and the right environment. I don't know if you've ever heard that expression, show me who you spend time with and I'll show you who you are. Another version of it is that you're the sum of the 5 people
People that
closest
you surround, yeah.
to you. So, those things are, who are those 5 people closest to you and what do they represent? And, what do they mean for your future and for your ambition? The same thing with LinkedIn. I thought that was really telling that you would not even accept friendships on the LinkedIn platform, right? You know how to compartmentalize. On the LinkedIn platform, you surrounded yourself with the people who could get you where you wanted to go. And I think that's really important advice for our
Don't
20s.
be shy about it. Like, look,
Yeah.
Ramona Ortega, she's a superstar. Like Ramona, and then I'll close out with this lesson I learned from Ramona. I would show up to these conventions and I wanted to be Mr. Friendship and be all over the place. Ramona would show up and she's like, I want to meet A, B, and C. And once I meet A, B, and C, I don't give up about anybody else here. And when she first did that, I was just like, wow, she's so selfish. That's wrong. And then I realized how much time I was wasting with people who were going to add no value to anything that I was trying to do. And by the way, you leave the convention, and since you have nothing in common and no goals in common, you don't even stay in touch with these people because there's nothing for you beyond the convention, right? I kind of learned to be very, you have to be very, uh, you gotta have to guard your time, right? And in everything that you do, be intentional. You have to be intentional with your friends, with your approach, with who you want to be your mentor. You have to be intentional. That's it. Like, don't be shy about being intentional. Don't be shy about showing up and this, oh, I'm here. I'm gonna cut through the crowd to speak to the person that I want to speak to, politely. And then the rest of the crowd is kind of like, what value is this crowd to me? You know? and lead. And once you got your conversation in with the person that you want to talk to, and if that person is busy, gets busy with other people, and there's no one else in the room you need to talk to, leave. What you sticking around for, right? And those are lessons that I learned later on in life that I wish I knew early on, because they would have cut a lot of the, a lot of the fat.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. And again, I
I'll
thank you
close
so
out
much.
with that.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I like Ramona Ortega. That's
Oh,
good
she is
advice.
fantastic. She's a rock star. She's not a John Jay alum. You still should have her on this thing. She's a rock
Okay. Well, I'm going to look her up and tell her you said that so
star. She's
that
a
she
rock
can
star.
pay attention to me.
Absolute rock star. Look
Yeah.
her up.
Thank
Tell
you.
her
I
I
will.
recommend her.
I will. I will. And you have someone at your law firm who I'm on a board with at Syracuse, Maria.
Melendez? Oh,
Yes.
she's a goddess. Like
Star
Maria's
too.
like Maria's here. Maria hired me.
She's from my alma mater, and I'm on an alumni board with her, so she's really cool. So yeah.
Maria's like a godmother figure in the Latino community, legal community. Like she's
Wow.
like that level. Like she's
That's
like
awesome.
like if you're in the corporate Latino, if you're in the corporate world, you're Latino, you don't know Maria, you somebody got to go and help you get. They're gonna go with a forklift to get you from under that rock.
Wow.
Under one.
Okay.
So she's a
That's
superstar.
great.
Oh yeah.
I can't wait to see her next time. Well, everyone, thank you all so much. Please give a virtual
I hope you guys found this
applause
helpful.
To Kenny, because he has 600 emails to get to. So he wasn't being
544. Maybe I
He's like,
exaggerated. I just looked. It's 544.
But thank you so
I lied.
much. It was excellent. This was great advice, and I wish everyone here much success. And I will, if anyone is interested in communicating with Kenny, I will not publicize his email, but if you reach out to me,
it's public. My email is on a public.
Is it?
My last plug, and I gotta hop, is do join Randy's. I think it'll be very relevant because Randy did have a different path to where he's at, and it was a more gritty path, and it was he, I think, had to bring to bear a lot of the tools that I think a lot of you can look it up. They're like 10 of us. I happen to be a Latino that achieves a certain amount of success, and I'm in a certain kind of bubble type spot where it's difficult to get to. I mean, that's just a fact, right?
Right.
He hustled.
Okay.
And he found his way, and I'm not surprised because he had that swag, he had that confidence. I'm like, no, I'm
all right.
I'm headed here. You coming?
So I'll see everybody on this call on that.
So let me know. I'm taking down names. Everyone here should join because his is going to be extremely relevant.
Yes.
He did a lot of the things that I would advise everyone to do in terms of hustling. Just like grinding it out, and he's doing phenomenal now. So
thank you so much for that, and everyone have a great night. Much success,
everyone.
And please
thank you, everyone.
Stay safe. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.